That will call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, October the 22nd. Looking at the agenda, are there any additions or changes? Seeing none, I'll move the agenda be approved as presented. Those in favor, opposed, motion is carried unanimously. Looking at the minutes of the April 23rd, 2019 Finance Committee meeting. Are there errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor, opposed, motion is carried unanimously. And we'll move right into item D1, 2019 financial report year-to-date as at August the 31st. Mr. Irwin.
Good afternoon, Mayor Borman and members of the Finance Committee. I'm here this afternoon to provide an update on year-to-date results as of August 31st. Not too much has changed since I spoke to you back in June. Many of the items are the same, but some of the numbers have grown just a little bit. Overall, again, the majority of year-to-date variances are due to timing. Many are projected to realign with budget throughout the rest of the year. There are a few items, though, that administration has identified and would like to bring to Council's attention. Both planning fees and business registry revenue continue to exceed budget because of the general level of development and economic activity that's going on within the town. RCMP fine revenue also is trending higher than budget. This is opposite to what we've seen over the past few years, actually, as there has been a renewed police focus on traffic safety in 2019. Snow and ice control costs are running approximately $100,000 better than budget year to date. This year-end savings will depend on November and December, but we have money in those months budgeted, so I fully anticipate that full $100,000, maybe more to flow to year-end. Currently, we've only received 50% of our policing grants annual allocation. Further payment of the roughly $200,000 is subject to formal provincial budget review, which we all know is happening on Thursday, so hopefully that money will come. And lastly, year-to-date payroll savings. So far, year-to-date is $890,000. In fact, it's about $1 million at the end of September, versus the annual budget of about $500,000. This is a result of a couple of things this year. Firstly, there were quite a number of new positions in 2019, as well as vacancies from 2018 that weren't filled quite right away. Some of the examples are Chelsea's position, Manager Finance, the GM of Corporate Services transition, new Administrative Assistant, new IT Manager. There was a number of them that overlapped. As well, the assessment services and support positions have been vacant all year as well. But a portion of this is offset with increased contracted services. And you'll hear a little bit more about this in a few minutes from Chelsea. We've also had quite a lot of vacancies and turnover across the organization this year, particularly in public works, facilities, bylaw, and engineering. This puts a strain on all the service areas, frankly, and increases overall workloads overall. Recruiting efforts are always focused on filling vacant positions as soon as possible. And that's about it. Your agenda package includes service area specific financial summaries that gives detailed variance explanations. And town operating results at the end of August do not suggest any action required from Council. In conclusion, we ask that Council accept year-to-date financial reports as of August 31st for information. I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thanks very much. So it looks like we're perhaps headed for another significant surplus to address at the end of the year.
My best guess right now is around 1.5, I think. Yeah, below 2% of overall revenue. So salary, wages, benefits, offset with all the assessment, the way it's running, probably around 500 at the end of the year. Planning fees, which is variable, it's going to be 400 or 500. The RCMP fines, snow, ice control. There's always some other savings. Now we'll be over a little bit in power, but we have the cannabis grants. So all in all, plus or minus a couple $100,000 from 1.5 is my best guess at the moment.
And that's even though we've been adjusting our budgets to reflect previous surpluses.
Yeah, and most of those areas are trending the way we adjusted them. So, so.
Great. Excellent. Councillor McCallum, you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mayor Borman. Thank you for your presentation. I am curious, on page 9, we talk about the 36,000 from the Provincial Municipal Cannabis Transition Program. Do we know if this is actually paying for the cost of introducing cannabis into our community and all the ancillary costs, or is it covering a portion of it?
I actually don't know the details of the grant itself.
I thought it was federal, actually, so.
We did receive an extra 26,000 as well. 36 was actually from last year. 26 was from this year. It was to cover our startup kind of cost, but to be honest, I don't know the details. I'm not sure Sally does, but we can.
The grant is actually being administered through community social development.
Oh, okay.
So it's more around, cannabis conversations, those types of things. That's really where they are the ones who are managing the grant going forward.
So I thought there was monies coming from the federal government. Is this the money that we're talking about that's funneling through the province, or was there?
This came from the province, but it could be the federal. I'm not sure where.
Yeah.
There was also announcements around policing grants, which may be, I don't know exactly what you're thinking of.
No, I was thinking more about the land
to
use side of it and
RCMP.
the extra work involved in having to vet and all that stuff. No? Okay. And then my second question was about the policing grant. So I was under the impression that it was $30,000 that we were worried over. It's $200,000. And so this is the 2019 or the second half of 2019
Second half.
grant allocation.
Second half, yep.
And so $200,000 is a substantial amount of money. And so I guess I'm curious as to, is it all on the line, or is it partially on the line, or we don't know?
Certainly hope
Based on
we're
the
gonna-
communications that came out of the province. Yeah.
So I think the 30,000 you're thinking about, the 35 is actually the library.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and so in both cases, the library and the RCMP, the letters we've received from the province have said, you're getting 50% and the other 50% we will let you know. So until Thursday, that's as much as we know, is that the initial 50% portion was granted and the rest was all under review on the blue ribbon panel.
Those letters were actually dated after the 1st of July, so they're interesting. Okay.
Subject to formal
Yeah, I
budget
know.
review is what
It's a
I-
little late. John? CAO would like to add.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. And I'm going to suggest that maybe Chelsea speak to what you learned at the, and I'm sorry, Chelsea, your last name is just escaped me, Richards. Miss Richards. Richardson. Oh, sorry. Because I know that she sat through a webinar on the policing grants and that it was mostly focused on the rural grant portion, but.
So there was a webinar on the police costing and some potential changes at the provincial level. My understanding from that webinar is they don't actually have a direct impact on us. Most of the changes that are proposed would be relevant for communities that have a population under 5,000 and are currently not paying any portion of their policing costs. And so with this new program, they're looking to share some of those costs, but since we're already paying a portion, 70% of our CMP costs, those changes, as far as I'm aware at this time, wouldn't be applicable to us. The impact is more, again, for those smaller, potentially rural communities that have that lower population, currently aren't paying any costs, but could be asked to share in those costs going forward.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, I have just a couple of light questions. So on page 9, the general municipal roll-up, it notes in permits and fines, the increase is due to outstanding balances on tax and utility accounts. So that's reflected, or so that's producing a higher than budgeted revenue in permits and fines.
That's right. We don't budget very high in that one because you never know year to year, which is,
So
it's going to be late on their utility bills and stuff.
So outstanding balances are balances yet to be paid, or?
Correct. Or, or were paid before. They may be paid by now, but they have been subject to penalties earlier in the year.
Okay.
Or July 1st.
So effectively, we just received 42,000 more than budgeted,
Yep.
but it's already in the bank, so to
Yep.
speak. Oh, I see.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And on page 16, the recreation roll-up, the savings in the contracted services noted, well, professional fee savings in rec programming. I'm just curious what produced that.
Yeah, that can just be a variety of different things. So sometimes they budget for an instructor for a course, and then the course doesn't go, so we don't hire the instructor. You know, it's all variable. That's a very operational department, depending and responding to customer trends. So those budgets are often the best guess based on last year, but a trend in fitness can change from year to year, and so it's mostly those types of things.
Okay, I mean, great, I appreciate that. It just seems like, I mean, it's a lot, it's well, 40%, so that's a lot of classes that didn't run or something.
It could be a little bit of timing as well, because it probably
Yeah.
ramps up a little bit in the fall.
Okay.
This one historically has been under budget the past number of years, and it's an example of one we did bring down in the 1920 budget, but, you know, it is
Okay.
variable, so.
Great, thanks. Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Mayor Borman. I had a question for you, Mr. Irwin, on page 7 about the municipal taxes. The year-to-date budget that we've collected is slightly under, sorry, the actual is what is under the budget, about $16,000. Now, do we expect to collect that by the end of the year?
No. This would have been, I don't know the exact details on 16,000 on 25 million, but it was probably some assessment changes and things that happened after we set
Oh, okay.
the mill rate.
Could that have
There could have been a
anything-
few adjustments as well.
Could that have anything to do with the tourist home
Could be part of it
forgiveness?
if some were reversed, if some were, yeah,
Oh, okay.
possibly could be some rebates back.
So that's not what we're expecting to collect in supplementary taxes at the year end, or?
No, it's a
No,
separate budget,
separate.
separate. Now, if supplementary taxes happen, we only budgeted 25,000. If they happen to be higher than that, it would offset the 16,000. So I don't know the number off the top of my head.
So these are places where we've not collected the tax that we,
Not necessarily
anticipated.
not collected. There's been an adjustment after we set the tax rate.
Okay.
Because when we set the tax rate, it's for exactly that 24 million.
Right.
And then there's always things that happen a little bit after. And 16,000 on 24 million. We do have some money budgeted in, right at the bottom, in other, about $50,000 that for bad debts and those type of things to offset these potential
okay.
potential things in any given year.
so there's other ways that we deal with that?
Yeah, we
Okay.
did, yep.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's all the questions we have in regards to that report. Thanks very much. We could move on to D2, the capital project update.
Next item to discuss is the capital project progress update report. This report details all active capital projects, both 2019 approved projects and ones that have been carried forward from prior year.
Ms. DeSoto?
I'm sorry, Mr. Irwin.
Oh, we need
There was a motion
yes.
from the
There was a
Finance
motion.
Committee,
That's right,
I
sorry.
think, or sorry, no, I'm wrong. It's just except for information, but it's, sorry, it just says a briefing to provide. I thought in the past we had the Finance Committee except for information. Ignore my interjection. Sorry.
Well, I wanted the same thing, but I figured you knew what you were doing, so.
Yeah, it isn't material. I believe you have in the past,
I think we have in the past, yeah, we have.
Right,
but you don't need to.
it's not required,
It's not required,
right, but I thought we had as well, so
yeah.
if you like, we'll do that.
It's the Finance Committee's prerogative, I guess. Sorry,
Well, let's just for the sake of
since
doing
I
it,
interrupted you.
I'll move that the Finance Committee accept the year-to-date financial report as at August 31st for information. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Now we're all good. So moving on to D2.
All right, next again is the capital project progress report. This report details all active capital projects, both 2019 approved projects and the ones that were carried over from prior years. This gives department managers the opportunity to update the Finance Committee with the status of all their capital projects. It's very important to note, though, that the spent to date column, the numbers column there in the spent to date, are only what was actually invoiced and processed in accounts payable at August 31st. They don't include committed amounts or any voices that have come in after or sitting on somebody's desk right now. So the most important part of this report are the words. Don't get hung up on spent to date, because that's a point in time at August 31st. So, and we'll do our best to answer any questions. I don't have a formal presentation on this.
Great, thank you. Not related to the finances, but I have a question prompted by this report around the public art. Do we know when the installation is going to occur?
Now it's been moved to spring of 2020.
Spring. Okay, thanks. The 7067, the project number 7067, the sprinkler protection unit. So I think what you just said might have answered my question. So it's noted is in progress, will be completed this year. When I was at the pancake breakfast just a couple of weeks ago, I was touring the unit, and I'm pretty sure they said it was pretty much complete at that point. So that 83,000, the unit is actually pretty much kitted out, but there's still 70,000 or something coming in.
And it may even be done by now. Again, this is point of time back at the end of August. So.
Great,
Yep.
Thanks. And under facilities, there's a number of projects that are noted complete, but there's nothing in the project budget spent to date.
Same thing.
Pardon me?
Same thing. We didn't have the invoices at the
Okay.
end of August. Mr. Hannes has said that the progress.
Okay, great. On the engineering flood projects, number 1762, the flood recovery DRP insurance, a 1.8 spent. So that was, 100% of that was covered through DRP insurance?
Yes. Grants and insurance.
Pardon me?
Grants and insurance, yes.
Okay, great. And just curiosity, in regards to the playground replacement at Lions Park and the tennis courts, we're waiting on the CFEP. When's this round of CFEP supposed to be in the works?
September 16th was the deadline, and I think they met in January, so they give them time to sort of. September 16th was the deadline, and I think that they let them know by the end of December, so that if they want to reapply in January, they can. Although they don't encourage you, they encourage you to wait till the April.
Okay. So, okay, we'll wait till the end of the year and hear about that. Are there any other questions from other members of the Finance Committee on the capital project report? Seeing none, thanks very much, Mr. Aaron. We'll move on to item D3. Ms. Richardson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the Finance Committee. I am here today to recommend that the Finance Committee appoint Avail CPA as the external auditor for the town for the fiscal years ending December 31st, 2019, 2020, and 2021. As some background, Avail CPA, you may recall they were formerly YPM, have been our auditors for the last 8 years. Our current contract ended with the audit of last fiscal year, which was completed this spring. In order to select their replacement, we issued an RFP for external auditing services. In the late summer, the RFP was issued on the town website and Alberta Purchasing Connection. We received 3 responses, which met the requirements of the RFP. An evaluation team composed of members of the finance department then evaluated these responses based on the following: their ability to meet mandatory requirements, such as our insurance requirements, price, the proposed auditing approach, partner supervisory and staff qualifications and experience, references, and also the firm, items such as their culture, their approach to customer service, items of that nature. Avail CPA had the highest ranked response based on 3 main factors. They had a strong emphasis on customer service, their proposed approach to the audit, and the competitive pricing that we received. Additionally, we've been very satisfied with the services we've received from them in the past. As such, our recommendation is that the Finance Committee appoint Avail CPA as the external financial auditor for the town of Canmore for the fiscal years ending December 31st, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Any questions?
Thank you for the report. Just out of curiosity, were there any local firms that bid on this, or is that?
No, 2 I think were from the northern part of the province, and then Avail was the closest bid we received.
I wonder if there are any local firms that could do it. No. Okay, just was curious.
Not sure about the capacity of local firms, but we didn't receive any responses from them as part of the process.
Great, thanks very much for your report. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. So I will move Finance Committee appoint Avail CPA as the external financial auditor for the town of Canmore for the fiscal years ending December 31st, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I'll speak to that motion and support the recommendation. I think, well, I've certainly been quite pleased or impressed by the work Avail's been doing over the years. So, and I think council has in general. I'm supportive of continuing to use their services. Any other discussion on the motion? If none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Moving on then to item D4, the assessment services update.
The next item on the agenda this afternoon is an update related to another RFP issued this summer, this time for assessment services. In 2018, Council approved the creation of an in-house assessment services department, and consequently administration posted the in-house assessor role and interviewed candidates. Ultimately, no candidates with the required skill set were identified at that time. As this is a required service and the timelines were tight, the contract with the current provider was extended for an additional year. Administration then looked into several different options for the 2019 assessments for the 2020 tax roll. These included the identification of a potential internal candidate to take the necessary courses. However, the education requirements require full-time study for 2 years, and we need this service every year, so ultimately that didn't address our immediate need for the service. We also looked at the possibility of partnering with neighboring municipalities to contract their in-house assessment teams, but it seems the recruitment challenges we experienced were also shared by our neighbors, and they no longer have the capacity to provide those contracted services. In light of all that, administration believed an RFP to find a new external service provider was the best option to provide these services in the short term. 3 responses were received that met the RFP requirements. We did structure the RFP to allow for optional pricing so that provided respondents the opportunity to price out all-in services similar to what we've received in the past, but also price out an option for them to complete the technical assessment portion of it with in-house administration support provided by the town. The RFP also addressed feedback that we received during the most recently completed assessment cycle. Following a careful evaluation and interview process, we entered into negotiations with the successful proponent, Benchmark Assessment Consultants, Inc., with the contract allowing for the eventual hiring of an in-house administrative support role. We believe this hybrid model offers the best opportunity to achieve some of the benefits that were highlighted in the of the in-house department that we highlighted in the original business case that we brought forward. Over the term of the next 3-year contract, there will be a comprehensive review of the existing assessment data while developing internal knowledge and experience that can assist in the eventual development of an in-house department. Our next steps with Benchmark include planning for the transition and identifying next steps for preparing the assessment values for 2019. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions at this
Great.
time.
Yeah, thank you. So the comprehensive review of the existing data, could you just expand on that a little bit to help me understand what that'll entail?
So with a new assessor in place, we've indicated that we'd like to have more involvement and insight into this as we're hopefully transitioning. Our intention is still to bring assessment services in-house. And with this new contract and the RFP process, we really highlighted that we want, as administration, a greater level of involvement and understanding as to how those assessment values are formulated, having more communication about trends within our community, and identifying some of those types of things. Also, as part of their services, they intend to provide a kind of report card or a summary report of the data that's in there now, and based on their professional opinion, whether there's anything they see there that they might propose handling differently, just fresh set of eyes on the data, and potentially a different approach from these qualified assessors.
And when you say data, you're meaning like current assessments of all the properties?
Correct.
So this process will review all current assessments, is that the intent?
At a high level, they're currently running reports and queries and trying to understand our local community, our setting here, the structure of the data. There's a common software that's used by, I think, 98% of municipalities in the province, but how different individual assessors take notes and utilize that software, my understanding is there's some differences, so they're just trying to get up to speed, understand what's in there, and identify what they plan to do between now and February in order to be able to declare our role.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions from Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Mayor Borman. Thank you for your presentation. I had a question about the, as we transition to the assessment administration, would that the in-house administrator be responsible for customer service or interfacing with customers?
To a certain extent, so that's what we've outlined as part of the contract of potential duties and responsibilities on both the contractor side and on our side. So we're hoping that by having that in-house assessor, we're able to provide a higher level of customer service to the members of our community. Ultimately, they don't have that technical assessment qualification, so my expectation that it'll be a little bit split. So if somebody reaches out to us and has a question just on basic information about their property that we're able to address, we will do so. But for anything that requires that technical assessment expertise that we don't have in-house, they will still ultimately need to go to our contract provider, similar to how they're doing now, to get that professional expertise if their question is something more judgment-based about their particular property. They can also set up an insight visit for that contractor to go visit and examine their physical property and some of those types of things. So it'll be a little bit split because they have obviously the technical expertise, but if it's more basic data that we have access to and can help them out, that's the intention.
So our administration would be the customer's first contact, and then they would be routed to the appropriate.
Yeah, as we get closer to that, I think we'll flesh out what those processes are a little bit better, but that's my understanding at this point. Just provides us with a little bit more control over that process and the ability to provide, again, a higher level of customer services to their taxpayers here in this town.
And this contract is a 3-year contract?
Correct.
And so over that time, you're going to transition into an in-house assessment?
Ultimately, that is still our intent. It is very contingent on finding an assessor who is a designated individual and has the depth and breadth of experience that we're looking for, both on the commercial and residential side. It really is kind of one person to meet the needs of our community, and so how we address that going forward, I think, was the challenge the last time around, but hopefully 3 years from now we'll have more information and be better prepared to address that, and I think over the 3-year contract, we'll be in a better position to do so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Could you just remind me how the province exercises its role of oversight or monitoring on the assessment process?
So there are audits that happen at the municipal affairs level. There's an annual audit every year that our assessment data goes through. I think it's at quite a high level, mostly looking at the summaries of the different assessment classes, is my understanding. Periodically, there's also a detailed audit review that the assessment, our designated assessor would go through, but also looks at our processes and procedures internally as the town as well. So there's kind of two phases. We're subject to the annual one every year, and then that detailed one happens only every certain number of years, depending on their own scheduling and team availability, is my understanding.
Great, thanks. And does that process inform, what's it called, the equalized assessment?
So the annual audit, I think, is part of the equalized assessment, and so determines the amounts of our requisitions proportionate to the other municipalities in our community. And then the detailed audit is more, I think, for our own purposes and makes recommendations for how we can improve things.
Great. Are there any other questions from members of the Finance Committee? Seeing none, thanks again for your report. That doesn't need any motion, does it?
No, it's just for informational
Great.
purposes.
I believe that brings us to the end of the Finance Committee meeting. I'll move that the committee be adjourned. Those in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Are we moving right into the workshop, or? But we're going to do it here? Yeah. Oh,